That can still happen today, particularly with, well, not so much today as it used to then when the singing club started off, you know. A lot of people thought a singing club would never take off. That was mentioned at the time when Tim Dennehy and Donald, that won't take off, you know. But they persisted and they succeeded. What I remember, you might start, the players would, the musicians would stop for a break, and you'd have to jump in with a song. Now, not all musicians now, I don't want to tar everyone with one brush, but the majority of them wouldn't ask someone around to sing a song, you know. There were and there are musicians, very good musicians who are singers and like the whole singing thing and realise that it's all part of the one tradition, you know. I remember one time up in Góilín, that was another place we used to go to for Rosie Stewart's weekend. Well, I mean, it wasn't just herself, it was her, she was one of the main instigators in bringing singers to that little weekend. But yeah, in the Cozy Bar. And the Cozy Bar was aptly named. It was a nice little bar, and at the back was an even cozier little lounge, which you could only fit in about 8 or 9 people, musicians, you know, and a little door leading into it. And it was jigs and rails and slip jigs and rails, and you mention it, you know, and barely a break. And I said to Barry Gleason, we were sitting there all morning, half the afternoon, not a song was out. No one was even invited in, you know, and they knew that there were singers in the pub, you know, and there for the weekend and all this, you know. And we could have went to another pub, but, geez, we were in there. And I was saying, geez, Barry, we'll have to do a song commando raid here, you know. So we called ourselves the Song Commandos, right? So we waited, and he went through a few tunes, and he stopped just for a minute. And I flew in the door, and I started singing, you know. And they were gobsmacked, you know. These musicians were gobsmacked, you know. And I sang the song, and I got them, you know, underneath the fiddle. And then 10 minutes later, Barry ran in, you know, bursted out singing, you know. And you know the voice of Gleason, all over the place. But we were doing this for the afternoon, you know, doing these commando raids, you know, song commando raids. Some of them, they don't realise that it's like the palm of your hand, you know. You have the music, the singing, the storytelling, the poetry, recitations. They're all part, like the one hand, you know. They're all part of the one tradition. Singers, musicians, storytellers, they should all try to know as much as possible about the other elements of the one, you know, and appreciate it and encourage it, you know. But unfortunately, there's some people, they just stick to the one thing. And I'm sure there's people that are like the singing that'll walk out of a music session. You know, it works both ways. But I think nowadays there is greater awareness among musicians because of the spread of singing clubs around the country, you know. And the likes of, you know, you mentioned the numerous records that are out there of all the great old singers. There is greater awareness now than even when I started getting interested in the singing by musicians of the singing tradition, you know. I think there's no doubt about that. 30 years ago or it's more, 35 years ago, in an Irish traditional session, right, as distinct from what used to go on over in Taylor's Hall and that, with the lads with the guitars. You'd have a few tunes with someone with a whistle or a pipe or whatever. And but the singing went on because they were into that. But an Irish traditional music session 35 years ago, 40 years ago, the singing would be very rare, you know, very rarely called upon, you know, unless they were a well-known, outstanding singer, you know. But there's greater awareness now. Much greater awareness.